live on Instagrams.
TikTok.
Oh, it's
live
TikTok.
Yeah,
okay.
TikTok. I'll maybe do Instagram
I
next time.
can't catch up with you.
I'm gonna try that next time.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man.
We're live everywhere.
Yes. Yeah. It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah, but busy though. You're running the Empire. Fantastic, fantastic charity event.
Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely.
Are the pictures out yet?
Not yet, no, but it was.
I'm dying to see the photos.
Yeah, I think the event turned out really well. We had a great turnout. You know, it was cool that we gave our first scholarship this year. So it was.
Did you really?
Yeah. So last week, Matt and Ed went to Stowe Rocks and gave it out because I was in Miami last week. So they were. Yeah, it's just really cool. The recipient, you know, she's one of 6, and this was going to be a huge help for her to go to cosmetology school. So
fantastic.
Yeah, it's really we're doing what we wanted to do, and that's what matters. So
I had no doubt.
Thanks for all the sponsors, everybody that came to the gala. It was a great time. So
it was a great time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, my wife's still talking about it.
Good.
We don't get out too much. We had a really good time.
Good.
We did.
Good. Everybody
had
did.
a really good time.
Appreciate it, man.
If you had the power,
Mm-hmm.
if the power was bestowed upon you today magically to change a major thing in this society, give me an example of something that you would change.
Wow, that's a big question. So if I could, the way people treat each other, I think I would try. If I could change something in society, I think I would make the world a little bit more kind, because I think people's natural reaction is negativity or defensiveness. Like, think about when you walk down the street and you look at someone and smile. You know, 20 years, 30 years ago, they may have smiled back like, oh, now it's like, what's your problem? What's your problem? Like, what's wrong with you? Like, the natural instinct in today's society is either negative or defensiveness. I would like to take that out of society. That's the one thing, because I think everything stems from that. If you remove the negativity and remove that natural inclination to become defensive, I think everything else shifts.
Where does that come from, though?
That's a good question. I mean, I think I don't know. Honestly, I think social media has created some of it, right? Because just the way people treat each other online, it's easier to be toxic and attack people behind a computer screen than it isn't in person. 2, I think just, you know, I think society has gotten easier in some respects and more difficult in other respects, or just living in general. And I think, you know, people have a tendency to look at what they don't have instead of what they do have.
Okay.
And I think that's the biggest part of the problem, right? Everybody's
jealousy issue.
Not even the jealousy. It's like the woe is me. Like, I'm in a situation, oh, poor me, poor me. It's like, well, look at the good you have. Look at, you know, yeah, there may be things you don't have, but there's a lot of things you do have, especially if you live in this country. Think of the rest of the world, people that the third world countries. If you live in America and you get to wake up every day and you have a roof over your head and running water and food and a bathroom and clothes and a job, you're pretty far ahead of most of the world. But people want to look at what they don't have. We all get caught up in that. But I think if people, I would create more optimism in the world.
Do you have any ideas how you might do that?
All I can do is influence who I'm in front of. So I look at that. If I have the power to create a positive change in one person, it can have a ripple effect. And I think if everybody starts looking at it that way, like I can't go today and change the world. I can change the people I interact with. And if I can start doing those things on a consistent basis, that ripple effect could expand exponentially. That's the way I look at it. It's just treating people better, being decent human beings again.
Yeah. Now, have you ever given any thought to the idea that maybe we need to look at what's being instructed for the youth in public schools and private schools, for that matter, and add some teaching or add some curriculum, or talk about the idea of adding curriculum, dealing with emotions, dealing with obviously for years people have thought about adding life skills like writing a check and understanding the banking system, things like that. But going down to the kindergarten, first, second, third
Mhm.
grade, talking about and instilling the idea of kindness
Yeah.
and instilling the idea of good. And
Mhm.
again, it's really subjective. I know there's probably a lot of religious things that get in there that
Mhm.
kind of mess things up, but the idea of just being kind to your fellow citizen.
Yeah.
I know it's up to the parents to raise children in that
Mhm.
way, but and I believe in that. I just think that we're at a crisis point in
Yeah.
exactly what you're referring to, and maybe there's a way to tackle it societally at that young age.
Well, yeah, I think it definitely starts there, but right, that's changing the entire system. Because if you think of the school system, well, it was created to create workers, right? I mean, that's the Rockefeller method.
Mhm.
It was created to create worker bees, and I think if you keep people in a state of despair or constant worry, it's easier to control them. I think that's kind of how the school system. I'm not saying the school system is bad, but I think that's just the premise of it, right? Keep them, behooving to a bell, to a routine, you stop work when the bell rings.
It's almost indoctrination.
It is to an extent, but I think it starts in the home, starts with the parents. It also starts with, I think, each one of us like realizing if we can influence people in a positive way
Mhm.
and we're choosing not to, we need to ask ourselves why we're making that choice. Because I've really started to think about this a lot lately. How can I particularly make more of an impact and have more influence on people in a positive way? Because I see the problem, and there's been times where I've just chosen not to do things just because I just didn't feel like it. And to me, that's a piss poor excuse. And I told myself I'm not doing that anymore. If I have a chance to help somebody or influence someone, even if it's creating a social media video that one person listens to and it changes
Mhm.
their trajectory, then it's worth it. I think more of us need to start doing that because I think there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of good to say and a lot of influence on others, but they're not using it the right way or using it at all.
Why do you think that is?
Laziness, I think, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. People think they don't have influence. I mean, we all have influence over
Absolutely
someone.
right.
Every single one of us has
Absolutely right.
someone is always looking at us
The
to be
problem
the
is we
example.
we start viewing that as currency, and I get it because that's how a lot of businesses run.
Sure.
But by doing that, we disqualify our effort to participate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and again, when you say the word currency, I agree. I think people do look at it that way, but I think if we just take a step back as human beings, and I heard of this phrase a few weeks ago in a mastermind I'm part of, and it was, how we always say, you treat others how you want to be treated.
The golden rule, right?
We have it though. This guy's used the platinum rule, which it was I've heard this not this way, and I like the way he articulated it. Says the platinum rule is treat people the way they want to be treated,
Mm.
and that's really being selfless when you think about it. Because if you think about the golden rule, it's a selfish rule.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated.
Yeah.
I'm not going to treat you the way you want to be treated. So when you think about it from that perspective, even the golden rule, which we were taught as 5-year-olds, we were taught to be selfish. If you think about it,
Yeah, I
like
see that.
really logically, it's just the words we use.
Mm.
Treat others the way you want to be treated. So it means how I want to be treated is what's most important. Because
Yeah, self-interest is at the
yeah, but when you think about
top.
it, treat others how they want to be treated. That means I have to take an interest in you, understand how you operate,
Bingo.
understand what matters to you, and treat you that way.
You have to understand.
That's a game
Listen and
changer.
understand first.
Yes, absolutely right.
Yeah. I see that. That's good. That's
I think
really
more
good.
people need to understand that. I think if we become more selfless as a society,
Mhm.
society gets a lot better.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I stumped you there.
Yeah, you did. You did. See, my big picture change that I could make is a little different. But
Okay.
I'm interested in sharing it with you because I
Yeah.
want to get your impressions. I would like to instill a system in our society where we would eliminate violent crime.
Okay.
And the way
Hmm.
generally I think we would get to that point, because it's not a problem you could there's no solution where you snap your finger and the next day,
Right.
it's all gone. But I've always wondered since I was young, Rocco, why in a civilized society in the United States of America, there are neighborhoods where you don't want to go in that neighborhood because there's a potential rate of something bad happening to you. That's a bad neighborhood. That's a good neighborhood. Why in this country is any street not safe 24/7? Why do we tolerate as a society the amount of crime that we tolerate on a daily basis? I mean, you have to step back for a second and look at it from a bigger viewpoint, because we're so in it. We're in it. We you know, we're always living in this society. But if we rejected the idea that it's tolerable at all, why can't we as a society make every house, every street, every location on this 48 or 50 states safe and tolerate nothing less and work toward that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a utopian society when you think about it, though.
I don't know if it's a pure utopia, but I mean, when the lack of violence,
what does violence stem from? Well, let's think about that. Like, what does violence stem from?
That's a great question.
You know, it comes from either a need to protect. I believe either a need to protect, a response in anger, a need for something someone else has, and that's your way to get it, or survival. It doesn't have to be greed; it can be survival. Like, it's interesting. I'm reading a book now. I can't remember the title of it. This is the second time I've been asked or talked about it. I can't remember the title. It was about influence. And the book starts off with like this guy's, you know, he's talking about his story, and he goes through, before he gets into his teachings on influence, he talks about 4 stories of influence he saw in his life. And one was about this guy. He was like an older white gentleman who was like a businessman, lived in a neighborhood in Chicago, and there was gang shooting in his neighborhood. And instead of like going to the police and just saying, oh, so they're shooting, like he went to the DA and wanted to meet with the gang leader. He wanted to understand. And the gang leader, I guess, said, you know, he's like, he wanted to bring his lawyer. And he was like, because he thought it was some sort of setup. And the guy basically said, if you're that big of a you-know-what to not meet with me, I'll go find somebody else. And so the guy met with him. What he did is he wanted to understand gangs. And so long story short, he created this company. We're now a brewery that hired gang members to get them out, because he realized that the violence stemmed from just survival and and they operated like a business, they operated like a community, but it was just a survival mechanism. He said if you take them out and put them into the same type of environment, but in like a business, they ended up thriving because it was just the environment they were in. They knew no better. That was their survival mechanisms. It was community, it was protection, it was loyalty. All the same things we teach in business were how these gangs ran, but they just were in that environment and didn't know how to get out.
I feel we just tolerate too much crime in this country as part of our daily life.
Yeah, but when you say tolerate,
violent crime.
So again, like, explain tolerate, because sometimes there may not be anybody to do anything.
That's a solvable problem.
But how do you force people to become policemen?
You don't force anybody, but you certainly put a system in place, I think, where we could entice more people to become part of the police force. And you know, the argument can be made, okay, well, the larger the police force, the more corrupt it can be. Well, there's corruption everywhere.
Right.
The idea that I'd like to believe we're probably the most advanced country on the face of the planet.
Sure.
Yet we tolerate so much violent crime, especially in 2025, as part of our daily life.
Yeah.
We just know those are bad neighborhoods, or these are bad scenes, or, you know, these kind of criminals might hang out here, or I don't want to get wrapped up in this situation because it might go bad for me. I don't know why, as a society, we're willing to tolerate that.
Well, again, I don't know if it's just we're just saying, oh, we'll just tolerate it, or if there's nothing they can do about it.
Do you honestly believe that?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. Because,
no, I mean, I'm asking you to think way outside the box. I get it.
No, I understand.
When we're in it, it's like, well, what can we possibly do? But when we step back and you say as a society, and you can extend it beyond our country's boundaries, I guess, but as a
Mhm.
society, we're permitting an acceptable amount of violent crime within our society.
Okay, but let's take it a step further. And this is where I'll play devil's advocate. So how do we prevent that? We create a larger police force.
Mhm.
Because that's really I mean, how else are you going to do it unless you teach people at a young age about kindness and decency? But okay, so then where do you draw the line? Then you become a police state. And the country was founded on the people governing themselves. Small government, small militia, like it was.
Can't the laws be written in a way that the police or the bulk of the police that we hire to alleviate the problem are there to address violent crime only?
Sure, but that assumes everyone's going to follow the letter of the law, which we don't do now. I just think humans are fundamentally susceptible to violence in certain situations. And I think until you remove or understand the root cause, you can do all you want to put protections in place and to put reactive measures, but it really comes down to what is the primary cause of this. The primary cause of this, in my opinion, is just a view of society. Like we have become a colder, more defensive, more negative society, I believe. If you start shifting society's perception of life and the way they view things, I think that's how you start eliminating violent crime. It has to start with changing people's mentality. Doubling the police force. I mean, okay, cool, that may work, but it doesn't address the fundamental problem. It's a band-aid. I think we talk about eliminating violent crime. We talk about eliminating all these things in the government or in society, but eliminating is one thing. Preventing the increase going forward is a different thing. I agree. I think we have to prevent.
Totally agree.
And you prevent, then I think it just dies out over time.
So you're more about preventing it by looking at how do you unwind the behavior and replace that behavior in an environment with something that will steer people away from.
Yeah, first understand the behavior that's driving it. Like understand why it's happening, and then shift that behavior. Because again, that's like, like if you look at trying to lose weight, right? I can remove all the shitty food from my house, but if I haven't changed behavior or my mindset, I'm not going to lose weight. I'm just going to go out and find it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Right? Like that's what they say. Like if you take away people's guns, criminals are still going to be criminals. They'll find another way. It's changing the fundamental mentality, the mindset. Now, if I change my mindset and say, I'm going to be a fit person, I'm going to be a healthy person, and a healthy person eats a certain way, works out a certain way, lives a certain way, then you can put all that shit in my house and it's not going to affect me because my mindset is not that of an overweight and unhealthy person. It's that of a person that is healthy and doing the right things. So you got to change the framework of the mind before you can change anything, in my opinion.
No, that's rational to me. I just think that I think it's insane that we are okay with an acceptable level of crime and violent crime within our society. And we must be accepting it because it continues to grow or at least exist.
But when you say accept it, like who's accepting it? Like
we don't stop it.
But again, how do we try to stop it? How have we not? I mean, when you say we don't try to stop it, I mean, we have police forces. I mean, yeah, I mean, violent crime. It's not like people are running rampant through the streets.
Take a town like Detroit. Let's just say, and I don't have statistics, so I'm not going to quote exact statistics.
Sure.
Let's just say let's say for a dozen years, it's the #1 murder capital of the country. So by year 3 or 4 of this statistic, we should know as a society that this is going on and it's intolerable. So whatever we have to do to cut down that number and the goal of eliminating it, we should do. Now, granted, you and I may disagree on how we can ultimately eliminate it, but the idea of more policing, I mean, if the question is live in a state of fear from too much police or let the criminals run loose and have at it, I'll take the more. I think most people would take additional police. You know what I mean?
No, I understand until we get to a point where corruption sets in. And
I would rather
then
have that probably.
we all say that, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, this is a very interesting and nuanced topic we're talking. This is not in my opinion, a simple fix. Like,
I agree.
Create more police, problem goes away. There is a fundamental problem underlying it all, and that is, why does violent crime happen? And until we understand that, it doesn't matter what we do. I don't think anybody's looking at trying to understand why it happens.
So punishment. Okay, let's add the second part of this question. I've always had a debate with a very good friend of mine who we both are, we're pro capital punishment, but he would always quote me statistics saying that the death penalty has not been proven to show as a deterrent to violent crime. Okay. And I believe if that's what the statistics say, that's what they say. To me, I can't rationalize how, if we had more capital punishment and we actually executed those on death row instead of having this quagmire of legal, that would be more of a deterrent, because people would actually see and be reminded of the fact, oh, I do this is what happens to me. I mean, losing one's life, I would assume, for most rational thinking people, is the ultimate price to pay.
Well, take smoking, right? Smoking has been proven to shorten a person's life. Absolutely, without question, proven to take years off a person's life. People still choose to do it. They know the consequences.
Is it slow burn? Is it the reason?
I mean, you can be on death row for 10 years. You're not going to get killed immediately.
Well, that's the problem.
But what I'm saying is, I think it boils down to a fundamental mindset. Okay. Until you change a person's mindset, death row, showing pictures of black lungs isn't going to do anything until that person, or we start shifting a mindset in society. If we can do that, then I think we start eliminating it over time. But again, that's always been my argument with the whole, Second Amendment debate. It's like, one, the Second Amendment was created for a certain purpose, but two, if you remove guns, it doesn't stop violent crime. Right. Violent crime is going to happen. The gun doesn't shoot itself.
It's an inanimate object.
Right. Like, you can't, there's a certain level of just common sense to it. I believe that we have to talk about the bigger picture. Like, how do we fix the bigger picture? What is the actual cause of the violent crime? Why are people that commit violent crimes committing violent crimes? That's what we have to figure out. And there's probably a few characteristics, if you studied across the board, that are a common thread. But we got to look at that, and we're not looking at it. That's the problem. I don't think, could death row be a deterrent? Sure. Do I think it is? No. Because again, if someone's a violent criminal, they're going to be a violent criminal unless their mindset is changed. That's just how I've always looked at it.
I can't argue that point. I get it. It has always bothered me how, from my viewpoint, we seem to be willing to accept, in the greatest country on the planet, and accept we have a threshold that we're willing to accept. We say it's terrible, and we say, oh, it's getting worse every year. We say all those things, but we're obviously willing to accept a certain level of violent crime in this country.
But I'd be curious to see if statistically it is getting worse across the board, or just in certain areas at year over year.
Why does it even exist?
How could it not? Like, how could violence not exist?
I guess my question would be, to your point, you're right. I will agree with you. You can't stamp it out completely, because it's, right. You have a wide variety of humans there. We don't take any real significant steps to reduce it, though. I mean, we don't, as a society, really tackle the problem with incarceration, with more police. We just don't do it. We rather err on the side that the police might be bad, and too many of those we can't have. So there's an acceptable level of, I mean, face it, we can massage any way we want, but there is an acceptable amount of violent crime that the American public, whether they like it or not, have been conditioned to, or are agreeable to accepting. And that's where we are.
But let me ask you this question. So, me not accepting it, what does that look like?
We need an
Well, I'm saying, so it got to start with certain
the
people,
individual
right?
can't do it. It's
Right,
gotta be
but we is a collection of individuals. So for us, for it to be a we that doesn't tolerate it, each of us individually have to stop tolerating it.
That is correct.
So what does it
We
look
need
like for
laws
me to stop tolerating
we
it?
need more police. We need law enforcement. And I'm not talking about other kinds of crime,
Mhm.
white collar crime. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. I'm talking about violent crime. We need more police, more neighborhoods, more patrolling,
Mhm.
and so that the public will realize
Mhm.
over time that we're not going to tolerate this any longer, and over time it'll come down. It'll definitely come down.
Okay.
Our jails will fill up, and
Sure.
maybe our death row inmates are going to go up too
Mhm.
for a while,
Sure.
I believe. But I don't think, if you're going to be a citizen of the United States and you're
Mhm.
paying your taxes and you're living your life peacefully, there's an undue risk that I believe is
Mhm.
way too high in a civilized society to be hurt or perish from violent crime. I don't think it's necessary.
So let me, okay, so you said something to be peaceful. Let me ask this question. How often do you think of violent crime? How often, I'm just being, this is an honest question. Like, how often on a day-to-day basis do you think to yourself, we need to eliminate violent crime?
All the time.
Really? Like,
All
I've
the
never
time.
thought of it because it doesn't affect me. Like, it's never affected
I
me.
think people can't escape it on their news, whether it's local or national. Multiple times a day, they can't escape it from the web.
Sure.
They can't.
Depends on what you look at, right? Like, I don't really look at that stuff. I don't really see it.
Yeah, I mean,
But the reason why I'm asking, I think you know, you're making a great point. We need to find a way, but I think part of the problem is, unless you're involved in violent crime or near violent crime, most Americans aren't even thinking about it.
You think so?
I can't tell you the last time I sat there and said, and this may sound insensitive, but we need to eliminate violent crime in this country. I can't tell you the last time I sat there and thought long and hard, like, how do we do that? Why is this a problem? Until we're having this conversation right now.
I think about it all the time.
Like, I don't, you know, I've never really
Would
thought
you
about
agree
it.
that we're constantly reminded by the media of violent crime in our society?
I think if you look, I think if you choose to be reminded by the media, there are certain media outlets. Yeah, absolutely. I choose to only watch certain things. Like, I've actually stopped watching a lot of the news. I typically watch, you know, if anything, it's like the late night shows that are more satirical than newsworthy, because it's just, I get the news I need to get when I need to get it. Like, I don't, you know, just randomly watch local news, or because, again, like, there's not much there that really impacts me, and the stuff that impacts me I find out other ways.
Yeah, I would venture to say, though, I believe that you're probably the exception. You know, you have to make a conscious decision on what you ingest, and I strive to do that too. But I can't sit here and say that violence doesn't. I don't ingest violence on the newscasts or through social media or through movies or through, you know.
Well, and I think that's the problem, right? What you're saying right there is people become desensitized to it, so you don't think about it.
Maybe.
So, I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Because I can't tell you one time in my adult life where I've had a discussion with any one of my friends.
Well, that's very dangerous.
But I'm just being honest. Like, I haven't had a conversation. Man, we need to eliminate violent crime in this country. It's just not something I think about or talk about. And I think it's not because I'm insensitive or don't care. Like, we're talking about, like, yeah, you're right.
It's pretty obvious that the Congress doesn't think about it much either.
Yeah, I mean, and again, there's so many pieces to this, and it's really hard to, you know, come up with a concrete solution or a concrete answer, because there's so many variables. Like, where is the violent crime most apparent? Like, what type of communities, what type of cities, what are the lawmakers in those areas? Because they're state government as opposed to federal. The federal government can't really regulate the state government, right? So if it's violent crime, those are state laws, right? That's not the you know, unless it's cross state lines, it's the state has to legislate that, and it's, you know, our state's underfunded. So there's so many pieces to this, right? Our police department's underfunded. Do they have enough money? Where are they getting the money from? It's going to go, tax dollars are going to go up. So then people are going to say, okay, well, we need to eliminate violent crime. We need to double our police force. Well, to double our police force, our taxes need to go up 30%. Then people in the community lose their shit. They're like, we don't even have violent crime here. Why are we raising our taxes 30% to increase the police force? It's this circular argument. I think we're looking at Band-Aids to a problem where in my opinion, we need to get to the fundamental issue of talking to violent criminals and finding out why these things happen. And can we do some sort of training or rehabilitation or you know, academic learning for these people that teaches them or shifts their mindset, because it starts there.
How deeply do you believe in rehabilitation? Criminal rehabilitation?
I mean, I think it's absolutely possible, 100%. I absolutely do. But it starts with the want to rehabilitate. Like the individual has to. Every change begins with wanting to change. If they don't want to change and just go through the motions of a rehabilitation program, it won't work. They have to fundamentally want to change. And this is the piece that I think people get so messed up with. They say, oh, it doesn't work. Well, that person wasn't ready to change. Just think about anybody in life when bad shit keeps happening to them, or they keep getting themselves in situations until something really bad happens that it's like, oh shit, I've got to make a change. That's when things flip. They actually decided it's time to make a change.
Yes,
and they want to make a change. There's no other option. Most people take a long time to get there. And that's where I see the issue. People it has to start with the want and the desire to change.
Yeah.
I mean, think about you. Like, think about just the journey you've been on when you started walking during the pandemic. Like, you realized you need to make a change. You wanted to make the change and you did it. Had you not wanted to, do you think you would have stuck with it?
No.
Right. But it started with you wanted to make the change. So you made the change. That's that's everything.
Oh, for sure. I just don't get how I don't get how we are willing to, no, I don't mean individually, but maybe individually too. We're just willing to accept some really horrid things in this country as business as usual. Yeah, that's sad to me.
No, and again, I'm going to keep pushing back, because when you say accept, like, I believe accept means I had the opportunity to do something different.
Well,
and
collectively we do.
But how collectively? So where does it start, right? Like,
it should start with our politicians,
right? But that comes for us having to vote the right politicians in, having to make sure they're looking at the issues the right way. There's so many that it is a very complex topic.
Neither political side in the country seems to really care too much about it.
But when you're talking about the federal level or the state level, because violent crime is regulated at the state level.
Yeah, I get that. And I don't know. So we live in Pittsburgh, and there's certain, crime's worse in this neighborhood than another. And I'm a realtor. I mean, I can't speak about that. There's laws against me giving advice in that way, and I won't.
Right.
But I'm not an idiot.
Right.
I know that certain values of homes or for certain neighborhoods, and the crime is a part of, the market setting values for property. And it flummoxed me. It does not. And I get that, also unfairly, public schools, some are better than others, some grade out, but I guess that's just life. But that doesn't bother me as much as the crime statistic does. Because I would think in 2025, as a society, we would not want to tolerate to the extent that it's there.
But again, I don't. When you say tolerate, like, that is a word that I take issue with, because when I hear you tolerate that means I could have done something and I just accepted it as is. Where there are certain instances where I have no control over what happens in Detroit, or in Chicago, or in these high crime
individually
areas.
You're right.
All I can do is control my own environment. If there's something I can do, like if violent crime is happening in my neighborhood, I'm going to fucking do something.
Are we apathetic? I mean, have we been beaten down on the concept of crime?
No, I don't think that. I think we're talking at a 30,000 foot view and a 2-foot view.
Okay.
And because it's like, we're talking about violent crime in neighborhoods, we're talking about tolerating it. To me, it's like, I look at it, if violent crime is happening in a neighborhood that impacts me, I'm going to do something about it. But if I believe violent crime is happening in Chicago or Detroit, I can't do anything. It doesn't impact my life. So why am I going to give a bunch of time and negative energy to worrying about something that I literally have no control over, nor does it affect me on a day-to-day basis? That may sound insensitive, but that's just reality. Where now, if it was happening in my neighborhood, then I'd be like, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to figure out how to solve this problem because it impacts me now. It impacts my kids. That's how I look at it. There are certain things in life that we're going to go through that are going to impact us on a day-to-day basis, on a very personal basis. We're going to do something about it. Then if that's happening and I'm not doing anything, then I'm tolerating it. But I look at it like just in general, tolerate's a strong word in my opinion.
Agreed.
It's more of okay, like I can't do anything about it. So if I'm going to worry about,
how about you being conditioned to accept it?
I don't even know that I'm accepting it because it's not it. Because what am I accepting? The fact that crime's happening in Chicago?
You're accepting that this is the world we live in.
Okay, but what can I do to change that? Like, there's crime all over the world.
Not collectively, maybe.
There's wars.
Nothing individually.
If we're going to talk about violent crime, are we going to stop all wars? That's violent crime.
No, I'm talking about what's happening in our country.
No, I understand.
Day in, day out.
But I think, again, like I don't look at I'm accepting anything because I don't see it every day. I see the news. Cool, but that has no bearing on me. It has no impact on my day-to-day. It's not happening in my neighborhood.
Right.
It's not happening close to me. So I'm not accepting anything. Now, if it was happening to me or in my neighborhood, in an area of impact I have direct influence over, and I do nothing, then yes, you can say I'm accepting it. Yes, you can say I'm tolerating it. At this point in time, we're talking theoretical in that instance.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's hard for me to say, well, I'm accepting it or tolerating it because it doesn't impact me at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be like me saying that, a drought in California, I'm accepting it. I'm like, it doesn't affect me. I don't really give a shit. Like, it has no bearing on me. There's nothing I can do. I can't go and bring water to California. Like, it doesn't have any impact.
Would you agree the idea of violent crime, the gravity of it extends to all citizens as opposed to a drought? You know what I mean?
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends because
there's the potential to be affected by that because no matter what your income level, odds are likely you're going to go into a convenience mart someday, no matter where it's at. You're going to a grocery store or attend a sporting event or something. I mean, you get exposed in society. There's a potential that something that you could be a victim of violent crime.
Sure,
it's definitely there.
But should I spend my life worrying about that?
That's a choice.
No, I'm not. And again, like I believe we have a police force for a reason. And it's one thing if I saw people running down the street, pillaging homes and just beating the shit out of people on a day-to-day basis. Like, okay, there's a problem. There's violent crime happening everywhere. Like the Purge or those movies. Like, I don't see that happening. I live in a relatively safe area where people are just normal. Like, I don't even think about it. I don't watch the news where it talks about violent crime. Like, yes, things happen in other states and other major cities. Okay, like, yeah, that sucks, but I can't do anything. If I was in those cities and it was impacting me and I would do something, but I have other things to worry about. I have employees and my family to worry about. Like, I can't worry about everybody else's problems.
All right. So let's bring in AI to this mix for a second. Do you think that at some point in the future, the near future, sub 20 years from now, do you think that AI will bring down the I don't know how it'll be applied, but the implementation of AI will reduce violent crime? Do you think the technology will be created to do that?
I'm talking about Minority Report, the movie with Tom Cruise.
It was a good movie, but that didn't come immediately to mind. But I get that was more about predicting violent crime.
But it was using AI to predict behavior. So I think. Again, do I think AI is going to shape the world going forward? Yeah, I do. With violent crime, like, I don't know, potentially. But again, that comes down to, okay, where's the line? Now you're letting technology determine what's violent, what's not, and how to stop it. Like, what if they deem violence as me beating the crap out of someone, but what if I'm doing it in defense of my child? Like, where do you draw the line? Can they discern that?
Right.
Do they have the emotional awareness to discern that this is a father defending a daughter as opposed to a father just beating the shit out of someone?
Right.
Like, there's a whole different level of discussion there, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know.
I didn't realize you worried about this violent crime this much.
Yeah, I think about it all the time. I don't understand. And you also will see statistics over the world, and we've got a lot of violent crime here. Now, might not have as much violent crime as some of the terrorist countries, but in terms of civilized society, if the numbers are recorded accurately, and who knows?
Yeah, exactly. What numbers can you trust? Exactly.
It seems like we have a more violent society.
Okay.
Now, I'm not one to believe that an implement of any kind is the cause of that. I think it's human behavior.
Yes,
for sure, is at the forefront. But I do find it interesting that there seems to be more order, even in some of the Scandinavian countries, and their crime statistics are so low. When you see society there, it seems a little more orderly. It seems a little more passive, maybe. But I'm not really sure.
Okay, that's an interesting point. So look at those countries. A lot of them are government run, government subsidized. So people have less worries. So when you violent crime typically stems from survival, worry, needs. People just, I don't believe on a general basis, people just go out and be violent for the sake of being violent. I think there's a need driving.
There's a cause.
Poor, they need something, they're in protection. Those Scandinavian companies, the government subsidizes most of the shit. Healthcare, food. So it's a lot easier to live there. There's a lot less worry and anxiety. So you pull out a lot of those negative emotion out of a society, the propensity for violence decreases substantially, in my opinion. Think about if you are a person that is in the low class in America, you're constantly worried. You're constantly, how am I going to feed my kids? Where's my dollar going to come from?
Absolutely.
You go to Scandinavia and you realize, okay, well, healthcare is paid for. I get a subsidy from the government. Okay, like I got to work 4 hours a day, and I got to. Life is great. Like, are you going to be really? You don't want to mess that up. So you're gonna be like, I'm not gonna. Why would I do something stupid? Why would I commit a violent crime when this is easy? Life's getting easier for me. I think a lot of the crime and violent crime in particular comes from an emotional response to something, a need or survival.
What you're saying indirectly, though, it's the more freedom you have within a capitalistic society, the more violent crime you may have.
Potentially, yeah, absolutely, 100%. I mean, that's the trade-off of a free society. If you want to remove violent crime, then you're going to have a well-regulated, well-policed society. And that's what we broke away from when we started the United States.
So you don't believe that corruption and a high police force in a nation can be separate?
Oh, they can. I'm not saying that just because you have a big police force is corrupt.
No, I'm asking, do you think those two can go? Do you think you can have a non-corrupt,
absolutely
increased police force from what we have now?
Absolutely, you can.
So why don't we do it?
Cost, the fear of corruption, the premise of how this country was built, right? I mean, okay, if you take an area, take a low income area, right, that has a lot of crime in it, okay, where's the money going to come from for the police force? Tax dollars, right?
Of course.
It's a low taxable area. It's a low income area. Most people are renters, small rundown homes. The tax base is so low. That's why a lot of these areas have 2 policemen in the whole force.
Sure.
That's the problem. Until we got to start pumping money into that. But where does that money come from? We're already trillions of dollars in debt as a nation. States aren't doing much better, right? So that money's got to come from somewhere. So what programs do we cut now to put into this? I'm not saying we shouldn't do that.
I'm with you. And again, I will state that we have not prioritized violent crime in this country as something that needs to be taken out. Because if we had, we'd find that money. Because Lord knows the other things we spend the money on in this country.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think again, like, violent crime is not in every neighborhood across all the country. So I think they're in pockets of neighborhoods or pockets of areas. So I think it's not thought of on a grand scale. The issues that a lot of politicians think about hit a wider audience. Yes, the violent crime is worse. Absolutely, right? It's violent crime. But if a violent crime affects this much of an area, but an issue that costs just as much money affects 10 times the population, and it needs solved too, where do you think a politician is going to go?
Well, of course. But doesn't it fascinate you, though, that you have the local politicians from these towns that are wrought with crime like that, and violent crime? You think their priority would be high to get something done?
And they may, but how do they get it done is the question. Where does the question is,
well, they
being
don't
a
know,
politician, but I'm saying like being a politician, like you're elected by the people, but that doesn't mean you have an unlimited budget to go in and fix all the problems, right? So you've got to say, okay, like what is the priority? What do my people say the priority is? If I'm elected at a local government level, I'm going to know what my constituents are concerned about. And if violent crime is the only concern or the main concern, then yes, you've got to fix that. But 9 times out of 10, I'm probably sure that most people say, how do I get more from me? Like, think about this. We live in a greedy society, self-centered society. So you're like, how do we get more money to me? How do we get more subsidies? How do we get, more benefits? So politicians that are in these small districts, they may be saying, okay, well, that's what my constituents want. That's where my focus has to be.
Is the governor of every state the top cop of the state?
Top cop?
That's, you know how like a mayor's like the top law enforcement officer within the town?
Well, I think it would be the attorney general is the top law enforcement officer in a state.
Do you think governors do enough for violent crime in their states? And it's a blanket question, but do you get the feeling that they are not, or that they are? Like, what do you think?
I mean, I've never thought about it one way or the other. I think we see about 10% of what a governor does. And I think there's probably 90% of what a governor does we have no idea. There's so many. You're running a state. So violent crime is just one issue of that state, and one issue in small parts of the state.
Could be,
but I mean, I name one state truly that violent crime is rampant throughout the entire state. I can't think of one.
Okay, good question. Good point. My question to you is broader view, because it might not be getting the attention of these legislatures. Is that an indication that we continue to devalue human life?
See, we're walking
big picture.
Yeah, no, we're walking a fine line. I don't think it's devaluing a human life. I think because that's a big statement to say that the politicians are devaluing human life because you're not focusing on.
Okay, so
but what if they're focused?
Highways are a big thing. Let's say Pennsylvania, just throw in random shit out here. Okay. There's a new turnpike coming.
Okay,
they want to do it because it's going to improve the quality of life and commerce and all this stuff. But you have this pocket of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and Harrisburg that's really violent, and you've got some real crime issues there, violent crime issues. If you're not addressing that, whether from a state level or from a local level, and you're putting the priority on, let's just say, this highway, again, 100-mile view in, we're viewing the lifestyle and the overall quality of life as the top of the food chain in that state at the moment, and violent crime, life or death, or injury, human well-being, violent human well-being. That's not ranking in the same. Violent crime is not. It's competing against, like you said, many other factors in the state. Why are we okay with life or death, violent crime being minimized compared to other issues?
Again, this is where I completely disagree with you. I don't think it's being minimized. I think we don't understand everything. So take the turnpike instance, right? Well, I'll use this as an example. Say they're putting a bunch of money into a stretch of highway on the turnpike to fix it because there are statistically 100 car crashes, a month on that stretch. That's more. That's probably takes precedent over violent crime, over putting money towards violent crime, because those car crashes could lead to multiple injuries of multiple people. So again, we don't know. We're making a lot of big statements with big assumptions. Like, we don't know what's behind everything. Like, running a government is a big deal, and saying we're devaluing human life, and not just because we're not, putting efforts towards violent crime. We just may not see it, because again, we only have the viewpoint that the news tells us. You or I don't walk through and live in violent areas where we're seeing it happen on a day-to-day basis. Let's just be real. So we're only getting information from what the news tells us. Some news stations make it sound like it's the worst ever. Like take during the pandemic, right? They were showing us videos of Italy, like these hospital beds filled up, these tents filled up with bodies. It wasn't even here. So what can you believe? So they're saying violent crime is up.
That's not going to get easier.
But is it up? We don't know. We truly don't know. We can only, unless you and I go out and count and pull every police record from every area and actually count them ourselves, we are basing our discussion right now on things said by a news media that may be speculation, maybe assumption, maybe completely made up.
Correct.
So it's hard for me to say that we're devaluing human life or these big statements because I have no data to support it one way or the other than what the news says.
I get that.
And looking historically, the news typically lies. Typically makes shit up.
10 years, yeah. It's hard.
I mean, they're not going to say violent crimes down because people are like, I don't need to watch the news anymore. Violent crimes up. Well, I better watch the news to see what's going on. I want to make sure it's not happening in my area.
Mm-hmm.
Saying violent crime is up sells ads.
For sure.
Saying violent crime is decreased in our country and things are getting better. People are like, I don't need to watch the news anymore. You know, things aren't as bad as I thought they were. People will let me know when they get bad again. They turn off the news. That's not in the news channel's best interest. So the world could be perfect, but they're going to tell us it's a shit show because they're a for-profit entity that needs to make money.
No argument there.
That's the problem I see.
No argument there. Let me ask you this before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Our government has not, to my knowledge, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't believe they've spoken up on the subject, but the last couple of years it's been floated in the media and some news shows that they're, during the past 4 or 5-ish years, with the amount of illegal immigration in the country, migrants, whatever you want to call them, that we have a large amount of children that are unaccounted for.
Okay.
I haven't seen numbers. You hear things like 100,000, 300,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything about this?
I've heard that.
Do you believe this is true? And if it is true, why is this not an extremely high priority with our federal politicians?
Well, so one, I've heard it. Two, don't know if it's true or not. So hopefully it's not. But if it is, three, again, we don't know what's a priority. We only know what the news tells us are priorities. And this is the problem I have with the news and us making statements like this, because the news is only going to tell us what they want us to hear or what they have access to. If there's 100,000 missing kids, there could be an entire sting operation happening on in the background. We have no idea about it. We're not going to know anything about it because the moment you tip off people that are trafficking kids, they disappear. So if we act like it's not a big priority, they keep operating the way they're operating, then it's easier to find the kids, in my opinion. Like it's playing chess as opposed to checkers.
I understand.
And I think if that's what's happening, I think that's if there are that many kids that are missing, I do believe that's probably what's happening in the background. Okay. I don't believe that's something that people should let go. And again, this comes down to even violent crime. I don't think we're just blatantly ignoring things. I think there's probably a lot that goes on in the background that we have no idea about because we're not supposed to know about it.
Oh yeah, I hope so. I hope you're absolutely right. Like I said, this conversation started today. What would you change? And I just always, since I was very young, always thought as great as this country was, it just seems to me like we're willing to. I know tolerate probably not, because tolerate does speak specifically to the individual. Yeah, but we're willing to live in a world where we accept a certain level of violent crime, which on the premise, violent crime shouldn't be accepted at all.
Should violence be accepted at all?
Well, violence is a broad term.
Well, we're talking about violent crime, just talking about violence. Is there any time where violence should be accepted?
Oh, most definitely. Protection of the innocent.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about for sport?
We have it in our sporting events. Yeah.
I'm saying, but is that something we should tolerate?
I think the broad term of violence is not. It's too broad of a term for the question.
But if we add the word crime on it, then we shouldn't tolerate it.
Correct.
But crime is defined by what we define it as. So
against our laws, right?
Right. So again, like, the same conduct can happen on a football field, and one could be a violent crime, one could not.
True.
You know what I mean?
And our court system will determine that.
But what I'm saying is, but we're willing to tolerate it in sport when the potential outcome could be a violent crime.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean,
you know,
and it's built into what you're saying is violence. It's built into
our culture.
Yeah.
We can't eliminate because it's part of our culture. That's the whole point, right? Because if we're saying that we can tolerate violence and the court will determine whether it's a crime or not, then that's across the board. Then if I shoot somebody, you don't know if it was in self-defense or not. You're just deeming it a violent crime, but you just said the court will determine it. So what we're saying is violence is tolerated in society. The crime is what the courts determine and the laws determine.
Correct.
So until a court says that is a crime, we're okay with it.
I don't think there's anything outlandish. Do you see violence being misinterpreted currently in 2025?
Well, I mean, again, I think you said violence is a broad term, right? So, but we're also using the term violent crime.
Yeah.
And you said crime is what the court or the laws determine it. So we're okay with the violent part. It's just when we add crime on it, we're saying we need to eradicate that.
I see what you're saying. Okay, good point.
You know, so we're saying violence is cool.
Yeah, we're willing to accept the certain. Yeah, we're actually very picky, and we're actually very choosy on what we deem acceptable and not acceptable in terms of violence.
Individualistic.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Some people think football is a violent sport and should not be played. Other people think it's just a sport. There's no violence. That's just a sport. It's very subjective. So it's hard to have these broad brushing.
And there's a lot of hidden violence in society too. Basketball's a very violent sport.
Yeah.
But it's not exploited.
Right.
You know, it's not the main focus.
Yeah. I mean, look at hockey.
But it's there.
They beat the shit out of each other. And they allow them to do that. Right? If someone punches someone on a hockey rink and they fall and crack their head open or get hit on a skate and they die, right? We're cool with the fight until the ending happens.
Correct.
If that's happening in the middle of a bad neighborhood, totally different way we look at it. Same conduct, same actions.
Yeah, it shouldn't be.
But you're talking about violent crime, like that would be, you know, based on what we were talking about earlier, could that be a violent crime?
Resulted in a
like
serious injury or a death. Yeah, that's to me, that's a no-brainer.
Right, but the court will determine whether it's a crime. The violence is occurring.
We can't determine.
That's what I'm saying.
Everything's determined by the courts.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we as a society, so it's not that we tolerate violent crimes. We tolerate violence across the board. And crime is just what the law and the courts say it is.
That's a good point.
So it's not that we're tolerating violent crime.
Maybe the question is the punishment.
What about it?
Is it sufficient overall, or is it
for
too
the court
lax?
to determine,
or is it too lax?
But that's for the court to determine the punishment.
Definitely
for the crime.
is. We're just talking.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think again,
it's not a deterrent, right?
Again, I think to be a deterrent, like a criminal's a criminal. Until they change, you're not going to deter them.
What's your thoughts on warehousing people?
What do you mean by warehousing people?
Our prison system.
What do you
like? When you think about I know you don't think about it on a daily basis.
No, I don't.
But I mean, you know, I'll tell you how I feel, and then you tell me how you feel relative to this. I am okay with building as many jails as necessary to house as many criminals that deserve to be there, according to our court system. So they're not out causing more crime or hurting other people. I don't have any problem with that. I don't think they should be overcrowded or inhumane when they're there, but I'm all for spending tax dollars on building as many as required.
Correct.
That's how I feel.
So
what I'm saying is I think the benefit of that is I would like to think that if a criminal or a portion of the criminals truly knew they were going to jail, and they weren't, it wasn't a revolving door, it might discourage some crime. Hopefully the violent crime.
But again, but you also, if you ever watch any prison shows, some people go to prison because it's better than where they're living. They choose.
Yeah, there's that.
That's a problem. This is such a hard topic because there's no right answer. Because there are people that will commit crimes to get off the street. Because if they get 3 meals a day, they have a bed to sleep in. You know, that's the thing. I think we need to fix society's problems. I think prison is the Band-Aid. The fundamental problem we need to fix. Like, there should not be homeless people. There should not be homeless veterans.
Agreed.
We're pissing away tax dollars on other countries. We should fix the problems at home by making sure the people that are living on the streets aren't living on the streets. We give them a chance. And if you start giving people more of a chance, I guarantee you that's how you start eliminating crime in this country. People are doing it for survival a lot of the times. I think a majority of the times in crime is an act of survival. And if we start giving people better resources and helping people actually get on their feet, we may see crime decrease over time.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Start. We can't prisons. Yes, okay. We have a need for them, make them. I agree with that. Make them humane. Give them a chance to rehabilitate. But the problem should be looked at from a different angle. Like, how do we fix this shit before it gets to prison?
Yeah, because often it's turned out to be generational.
Yeah, right.
So there's got to be some salve that or some way to re-steer.
And people will get released from prison and do something to go back in.
Recidivism.
Because they want to just be in. They want to be a place where they're getting 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
So they'll get out and then commit a crime to go back in.
And that's a significant reflection on a failed aspect of society.
Correct.
For
sure. Yes. We should take care of our own first.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. That made my brain hurt today, man. Man, my brain hurts.
Says big pictures. All right, my friends. Until next week, we'll do it again. It's exactly 1 hour.
Yeah. I know my TikTok was going to shut down. I just restarted.
I felt bad.